Hi everybody, it's Laura. Thank you so much for joining me on my channel. Today I have a layout that I made for this month's Stretch the Sketch challenge. In Stretch the Sketch, we take a sketch that's intended for a 12 by 12 inch layout and we either stretch it to a larger format or we shrink it to a smaller one. And I have been shrinking the sketch for quite a while now because I'm working on a smaller album. So I'm using this opportunity to create a number of layouts for a small album that I created after taking a class with Janet Fritz quite a while ago now, probably a couple of years. It was called Impactful Storytelling, and it's a little album about myself. So for this layout, I'm using the sketch, and there seem to be two sketches in one. I guess you could have put those together to make a larger sketch, but since I'm shrinking the sketch, and I really love the sketch that's on the left with the banners behind the photos, I decided that I was going to use that portion of this kind of double sketch for my layout. So as I've been doing in the past with Stretch the Sketch, I did some major stash diving and I used some older My Mind's Eye collections. I mainly used the My Mind's Eye Lost and Found collection called Market Street. I really liked the way there were lots of pinks and greens, and I'm going to be including a photo that you could see on the upper right hand side of my mat that has my newborn daughter Julia. She is now 24 years old. And then I also have Danielle, but I thought that it would be nice to have some, not necessarily baby colors, but some kind of soft colors that would go along with the theme of a baby. I'm also going to be using a few elements from Hello Gorgeous and Lost and Found Blush, and those are two other My Mind's Eye collections that kind of coordinated that I had in my stash. I started off with a piece of pattern paper that measured approximately 6¼ inches wide by 8½ inches high. I gutted that piece of pattern paper, that's the kind of bright pink paper, and then I placed a piece of white cardstock on top of it, cutting it a little bit smaller so that the pink paper would be a mat. And then I used the 6×6 inch pad of the same paper and I cut out a number of strips. Just like in the sketch, I'm varying the thickness of the strips and I'm also varying the length of the strips. I wanted there to be a little bit of variety. I like the way it looked in the sketch. I'm not sticking exactly to the sketch. I didn't count how many banners there were, but I'm using enough banners to cover up the majority of the background. And then after I had cut the strips, I cut some fishtails in the end. In some cases, I cut one end and then the other end, and in other cases, I cut them both at the same time. I wanted to ink the edges of all of the banners, so for the banners that had more pink than any other color, I used Distress Oxide in Victorian Velvet. And then for the other banners that are more on the greener side, I used a Distress Oxide called Iced Spruce. My next step after inking the edges of all of the strips was to put them in place on the background. I don't want to have all of the pink in one spot or all of the green. I also don't want all of the long strips together or all of the short strips in the same place. So I'm trying to spread the strips out based on their color and their size. And you don't see this on the video, but once I decided on the order of the banners in the background, I took a photo of them with my camera. This way, I would remember what order I had them in, even if I was to forget or move them around. I find that I tend to use my phone a lot when creating layouts. Sometimes I'll take a picture at a certain point if I want to try something different, but I want to remember what it looked like originally in case I wanted to go back to that. I find that my phone can be really helpful, and I can't tell you how many times I've really regretted not taking a picture of something. I don't know if you do the same thing, but I find it very useful to have my phone camera available when I'm making layouts. Now, as I mentioned, this is my photo. This photo measures 2¾ inches square. I have a white border all around my photo, and then I added a pattern paper border around it as well, and that's the same pattern paper that I used to mat the layout on. At first, I was really excited about the idea of having this strip of paper going down the center of the layout, but later on, I decided that it just was too bulky and there was too much weight in this large strip of paper, so I end up putting that strip of paper aside. Before I do that though, I use a piece of that greenish paper and I mount my photo on that paper. And now I have a pink mat and a green mat, and I think that that was a good idea since I have both of those colors in the background. And once again, I'm using those same colors of Distress Oxide to ink the edges of the pattern papers. This is when I decided that that strip of paper just had to go. I had a couple of embellishments that I selected from a collection that I absolutely love from My Mind's Eye called Hello Gorgeous. It had a lot of the same colors as the collection that I was using on my layout. I picked out 2 tags for on top of my photo, and I liked this sentiment that said, "Hello, beautiful." I thought that could be the title. So I inked the edges of both of the tags, and I was also thinking about incorporating 2 glitter hearts. You could see them off to the right-hand side of the layout right now. And then I thought that I should start attaching things down, so I attached the photo down pretty much in the center of the layout. And then I wanted to tuck the tags on top the way I had them before and then include that sentiment underneath the photo. Even though I really like the tags and I thought that they looked kind of cute, I ended up deciding that this layout was just kind of a little bit boring. I just liked it, but I didn't absolutely love it. So while I was considering what I was going to do, I used my EK Success photo corner punch and I punched out some photo corners. I punched out 2 pink ones and 2 of the greenish blue ones from some of the scrap pieces of paper that I had after I cut out those banners. And once again, I inked the edges. Even though those photo corners are so tiny, I really like the look of them having inked edges. So I inked the edges and then I attached all 4 of them down to my photo. And although I do get some ink on the photo corners, I ended up getting a lot of the ink on my fingers. But luckily, since it's Distress Oxide, the color comes off pretty easily. There have been some times that my fingers have been stained for days with some of my scrapbooking projects. So I ended up taking away those tags and taking away that title, and I instead included this title, which I cut in half. It says, "You make the world a better place to be." I got this title from another My Mind's Eye Lost and Found collection called Blush. I didn't think that the 2 collections went together perfectly. The Blush, that's where I got the title from, and then Market Street is where I got the pattern papers from that are already on the layout. But somehow I think that this title went just fine with the layout, so I decided to just go with it. I mounted the 2 parts of the title on that same pattern paper that I used already on the layout in a couple of places. And then I just used my scissors and I cut all around to try to make an even mat. And this is something that I like to do a lot, add a mat to an embellishment. And sometimes I don't cut the mat out perfectly, but I really don't think that it matters. I feel like in the end, you don't really notice if it's not perfectly spaced all the way around the outside of the embellishment. There were a couple of places, especially around the curve that's in both halves of the title, that I didn't cut out perfectly, but I still think that it looks okay. I hope so anyway. Now I have the main parts of my layout assembled, so I thought this would be a good time to add some embellishments. So I got some greenish pearls and I also got some pink pearls, and I put 2 pink and 2 green pearls on the matching photo corners. And then I used those same pearls that I used on the photo corners and a couple of others to add some pearls to each of the banners. And you can see that I also used those kind of large glitter hearts that I was considering using earlier on. And I put one in the upper left-hand corner and one in the lower right-hand corner. They were kind of large, but I think that they worked because the title and the photo cluster is kind of large too. In addition to pink and green pearls, I also used a couple of white pearls on some of the banners. And then to add a little bit of texture and a small amount of dimension to each part of the title, I added 1 little pearl to both halves. From the same collection that the title is from, I had an ephemera pack with this sentiment in it that said, "So happy for every moment with you." And I absolutely love that. I had to include that on this layout because I really am so grateful for every moment that I have with my kids. I really love spending time with them. I always have. And now that they're older, it's just so nice to enjoy them on a different level. And both of my kids are just really fun to be with. And I'm really happy that they are part of my lives, beyond happy. So I just really want to include that sentiment. I had to really squish it in there. It was just a tiny bit too big, but I think that I made it work and cut it back several times until it was as small as it could possibly be to fit on the heart. And then, of course, since I had a sentiment on the heart that's at the bottom, I also had to include one on the heart at the top. So I used the word sweet, which was from that same ephemera pack. I also used a bow that was in my stash. I thought it would be nice to add a little bit of a different texture to the layout since I have so much paper on there. And then I realized that some of the banners looked a little bit too short to me. So this is what I did. I took a strip of paper and then I cut the banner in half and then I mounted the pieces of the banner on top of the strip. That way I know that the strip will be straight when I put it on there. I could have just cut the strip in half and then just pieced both of the sides on there, but I knew that it would look crooked. So I thought that that little strip of paper would really help to make everything stay straight. Now I'm using some of my ATG adhesive and I'm attaching both of those sentiments that I had cut out to a small amount of pattern paper. And I just think that that little tiny mat really helps the embellishments just look a little bit more finished. And the sentiment on the bottom isn't really in the center of the heart. It's like a little bit off center, but I figured I just really wanted to include that. So I was just going to let it be a little off center. And then I was thinking I really should ink the edges of those sentiments since I had inked the edges of everything else on the layout. And that's the last touch that I add to this layout. It's a very simple layout, but I think it turned out kind of cute. So here are a couple of close-ups. I highly recommend that you check out all of the Stretch the Sketch videos from this month. And if you're interested from some of the past months as well, you can find the playlist in the description box. There are so many talented scrapbookers who are part of Stretch the Sketch. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. I hope you have a great day. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.